back to Tabletop Assault. I'm Ross, and today I'm going to give you my first impressions of the new Astra Militarum Codex. So a couple of things to go over before we really get into it. One, this is a little bit of a scuffed one because originally we were trying to do, when we do reviews of books, we try and bring two of us on and discuss aspects that we like, you know, aspects of what the first person saw, what the second person saw, and see what we did enjoy. However, during the process, when handing over the book and codex and everything to one of the other party, they unfortunately fell ill and unable to help us along with the review. So that resulted in just myself doing the review today, and unfortunately it means I don't have the book on hand because it's at the other one of the members. Now I do have all my notes from the codex, so I'm quite well informed in what's actually going on in the codex. I've got all my notes in terms of all the aspects I like, all the aspects I don't like, and yeah, so at least I'll be able to speak to you on that part. The other thing as well to say is that this is a first impressions thing, and the reason for that is that, well, let's face it, leaks do happen, and so there's no point in me going over every aspect of the codex because many of it has been seen already. That's just the nature of sometimes the internet. So how it's going to work is that I'm just going to run over some of the things I had concerns going from the previous codex, what worked and what didn't work there. I'll then go over some of the areas such as the regiments, what I like about them, the stratagems, relics, warlord traits, psychic abilities and orders, say what I think of them, and also looking at some of the units that I think might be quite good, or the ones I might be interested in running myself. Astra is a force that I'm actually quite new to myself. It was the second army I painted. Really, it was my sort of 2020 project, and I painted a whole bunch of these infantry, and then they decided to update them, and now they're updating them again. And I'm looking at that as a positive because that gives me a whole bunch of new models to paint. Not that I'm lacking on models in my cupboard of shame, there's a lot of models to go through at the moment. So with that, let's go into really sort of my concerns from the past. So Astra was an interesting one when it comes to things and the problems of the past. The main one being is that really that a lot of the things did kind of work out well, where they came out just after sort of the Space Marine codexes that came out, and there was probably more concerns with the Space Marines and Chaos Space Marines codex there. Astra came out and it did work out quite nice, the regiments worked out well, but one of the main problems was some of the units really did sort of not make sense. I was looking at the Death Strike missile, really didn't quite work out maybe as intended, or it just wasn't that useful. Or another one was, and we came to realise, is that some of the units were just really as efficient as one another. Now, what does that mean? I'm mainly talking about Lehman Russes. Why would you take a normal Lehman Russ when you could just take a commander? And that became a real problem. So many of those areas really need to be addressed because, yeah, it just resulted in a lot of areas that just didn't quite work out. And I suppose that's going to happen when you do have a huge amount of units within a codex, and many of them do fulfill the same role. So you had to bring that individuality and a bit more what reasons for taking them. The other part as well is that the codex itself was old. I think at this point the old one is about half a decade old. I think it came out in 2017, and near the start of 8th edition I want to say, so it has been a long time. And although the codex had got updates, this is through Vigilus, which frankly I completely forgot about, and then we got Psychic Awakening, and then we also got datasheet updates. It became a real mess really playing Astra Militarum. If you wanted to really know in terms of how to play the rules for them properly and efficiently, involved you playing old books that were updates that are now considered old again, and you needed to keep up with these data sheets. So having a new codex really just to bring everything back together is very ideal, and I think it is going to make things a lot easier. Just reducing that mess from where it was, hopefully down to where we are now. So let's start off with regiments. One thing I find very interesting about the regiments is they have now taken away the sort of universal regiments. What I mean by that is, you know, Cadia had rules, then Catachans had rules. They're kind of gone now, and they're now replaced with regiments that you make yourself. You choose two abilities more or less. You can go for the standard one, or you choose 2 regiment sort of rules and then bring them together, and that brings a bit of individuality. Now it's just interesting that Chaos Space Marines really got rid of this. Chaos Space Marines really just had the legions, and they got rid of making your own sort of warbands or legion rules. And I actually like that about the Chaos Space Marine Codex quite a lot. I just find that when you have all these rules and customization, it can make balancing really hard for the game, which, let's face it, has been a very stickler point. But then I thought they were going to go down that route. They're going to say, look, we're not going to make these sort of custom ones anymore, we're just going to set them preset. No, they went the complete opposite direction for Astra Militarum, and I don't know how I feel about that. I think it kind of makes sense what they're going for. The idea of Astra Militarum is that there are so many regiments, there are so many different worlds or systems that have their own way of training. So in that sense it kind of makes sense that, yeah, you'd make them have their own different rules from that. Be that way, I'm interested to hear what people's thoughts are on that. Is that the right direction to go? Did it make you feel like you're losing a bit of that individuality of having certain ones? Are you missing having preset ones? Let me know. Anyway, the ones that I do see I like here are Elite Shock Troopers, which is I think every unit gets at least 1 reroll to hit. We see this often in other forces, and it does prove quite popular. I think this will be an easy go-to one, certainly will help you be more efficient with your attacks, so that's a pretty good one. Heirloom Weapons, which is your 4-inch extra range to some of your weapons. Now this could be Demolisher Cannons, just getting that extra 4 inches can make a difference, but Astra Militarum do not lack in long range warfare, so having that extra 4 inches can be something you can just mitigate by having weapons with long range. Recon Operators, which is a free 6-inch pre-game move for infantry, cav and sentinels. Now this is one I really like. I use it for Necrons a lot. Just that extra 6 inches. When it comes to Necrons, I move them in big bulk forces that are hard shift. Extra 6 inches then really gets you into the mid game very, very quickly with some of your slower units. I think it's a pretty safe one. That's pretty good. And then Swift as the Wind, which is 1-inch movement to infantry and artillery, 2 inches for others, and +1 to your charge. Now, like that, I'd almost go always to the Recon Operators. I think that just early movement really works out quite well. If we had more combat-based stuff for Astra Militarum, though we do have Rough Riders back, then yeah, I'd see again a bit more use in that one, just that extra charge and extra movement being really good. Suppose if you are going very heavy Rough Riders focus, then yeah, that could be absolutely excellent. Overall, some of them I think are a bit niche. I think you really need to work yourself. You need to make your list around to get full efficiency. But these ones I like because they are quite reliable. You are going to see use from Elite Shock Troopers. Yep, I think will be one of my go-tos, and the Recon Operators. Next is on stratagems, and I was a little bit disappointed with stratagems. I felt far too many of them were a little bit too niche and too situational in this one. We've maybe lost a couple of our go-to set ones that are really useful in many situations that we saw in Psychic Awakening. There was plenty there that really helped quite well. And so, yeah, there's a few still there that I do quite like. Main one being Relentless, which is 1 or 2 command points, and this allows a vehicle to work at full efficiency. Now, it's 1 command point for Astra vehicles, and then 2 if it's a super heavy. Interesting, it appears the Rogel Dorn is going to be 1 command point to make sure it works at full efficiency. So that's quite good. I'll speak about the Rogel Dorn shortly. We've got Vicious Traps, using the opponent's charge phase when they charge a unit entirely in an area of terrain. Roll a d6 on a 2 to 5, it suffers d3 mortal wounds. So how I should explain this better is that if an opponent charges a unit of yours that's entirely within the terrain, then this can activate for 1 command point. And 2 to 5 is d3 mortal wounds, 6 plus is 2d3. But there's a bunch of ways to actually make this work better, and that is if you're Catachans, if you're Guerrilla Vets, if you've got Catachans or Guerrilla Vets, you get +1 to your dice. If you've got Meltamines, you get an R+1, and if you've got Slime Marble just on the field, another +1. So there's easy ways to get a bunch of mortal wounds if your opponent does charge into you. Maybe have a rogue character coming at you and then throwing in a bunch of mortal wounds might cause problems. But yeah, it's a cheap way to get mortal wounds in when your opponent's making a charge, which I quite like. And then obliviative plating? Yeah. 2 to 3 command points, used when a battle tank or armoured unit is attacked. Until the end of the phase, it's -1 damage. So I think this is 3 command points if it's a super heavy or a Rogel Dorn, and the rest is going to be 2 command points. I think this is very useful because there's a bunch of ways you can maybe stack survivability on a unit, which would be quite good. I can see this being really nice for Rogel Dorn, though a bit expensive at 3 command points, simply because I see that as a unit that is going to act as a distract fix, and if you increase the survivability, it may make your opponent think twice about doing so. Overall, when the stratagems, I'm not too happy losing some of our very, very reliable ones, and yeah, there's a few niche ones there that are quite nice, but certainly the Relentless one I think is quite good, and the Obliviative Plating is going to be quite good ones to use. The Warlord traits I was actually quite happy with. We have superior tactical training. Essentially, Warlords can know an order system it would not usually know. Now I wonder if there's going to be rules. That one, as I can see, is a potential one where interesting shenanigans might happen, but essentially it allows a Warlord a bit more versatility in who they can command. Lead by example. Officer unit can issue an order to itself even though they usually can't. Now this might actually be really useful on Gaunt and his unit. Essentially you can give them the, I think, fixed bayonets. Pretty sure they can benefit from it, but give them +1 to it and improve their AP. And then you've also got the Perfectus orders. I believe you can then go on himself. And I really want to field Gaunt's Ghosts. They are, I think it was 120 points for them, and they're really, really cool models. They are ones that I've on my painting table waiting to be done at some point, and I just think that, yeah, that might be a solid one for them because, well, they've got a whole bunch of abilities on them, and if used right, I think they could do quite well. And then we have Grand Strategist, which is your 5+ to gain a command point when you spend one. So regain command points. It was useful beforehand, gotta keep it, always a very reliable one to choose. Psychic abilities I was less impressed by, but when it comes to Astra Militarum, Psychic is one of those things that's nice to have, but it's not the most important one. So Psychic Barrier, which gives a 5+ invul to units. Now, I don't think that's as useful as some people might think it'd be. People always seem to think invuls are absolutely fantastic, but it depends on the unit. So a lot of the army now has 2+ armor save, and so if you're really to get an advantage of a 5+ invul, you need to be hit by something that's AP -4, because 2, 3, 4, 5, then you need to get 6 to then say, oh, that 5+ invul's working. And if Armour of Contempt is in the Codex, which at the moment it is not, but that was the same case for Chaos Space Marines, then it would probably be -5 AP, so I'm really seeing that as more one that might be more to protect infantry or vulnerable infantry. So it just seems a little bit less useful. Next we have Night Shrouds, which is units can't be hit on unmodified hit rolls of 1 to 3. Super Heavies only benefit from this when it's cast on 11. I think this will be a pretty good go-to psychic ability if you are going to take Psyker. Really able to protect a Rogel Dorn because it's not super heavy. As far as I checked, I don't think I had the super heavy rule. I think that was only just the Baneblade variants. But basically, yeah, that one is probably going to be a go-to one if you're going to take Psychic. And the other one is Mental Shackles, which I should have said they're all Warp Charge 6 on these, and the previous two 12 inches. This one's 18. Enemy units suffer -2 move, advance, and charge. It's a good range, 18 inches. I think any further might have just made it too easy to cast off, but it will really slow down a unit. I'm a big fan of using Chaos Terminators or Scarab Cult Terminators, and that slowing down really will hinder them quite a wee bit. As I said, overall Psychic not too impressed with, but again, if there's an area I'm not too bored by when it comes to Astra Militarum, Psychic I could give a pass on. The relics, some of them were pretty good. I quite liked them there as well. A couple of highlights I'd say is the Clarion Proclamatus. Essentially avoid the range for orders, but can only be used on Vox units. I believe it's an upgrade for a Vox. And although the Vox ability, now a lot of units that get Vox get it for free now. A lot of the upgrades you will now see are just built into the points. And yeah, so just having that unlimited range, I could see this being more useful near sort of mid to end game when your units are far more spread out. You need to make sure that the orders can go wherever you need them to be. So that one seems like a fairly good one. Finale of Nimradosh the First. I butchered that pronunciation, is Regimental Standard Upgrade, gives them the order that Astra Core within 6 inches, so this is an upgrade for the Regimental Standard. Astra Core within 6 inches can ignore to hit wound modifiers, and enemy units cannot use abilities to ignore wounds. Now that's interesting because that would essentially affect a Baron or the Nightbringer, because their ability is that they can, I believe it can, it's not just a case of the 5-up ignore wounds. When it says abilities that ignore wounds, that essentially means that it should affect Abaddon and the Nightbringer as well, because it depends on the wording on that one. I might need more clarification on it. I know in some circumstances where I've said that they ignore any more damage received or they can't suffer any more wounds. Would that ignore it? I'm just interested to hear. Along with this banner, I don't believe it's a replacement for the banner, it's an additional ability. And the banner itself, I believe, gives core units an aura ability, core units reroll wound rolls of 1. So very, very dangerous sort of upgrades in that one, but it is for core units only. So something like heavy weapon teams that do have the core rule would be something I'd be looking at to possibly benefit from this, because that's a lot of abilities on them. Heavy weapon teams though are quite, let's say, squishy would maybe be the technical term, and so they can be targeted by that. But I think just having all these stacking abilities next to a standard, next to someone who can issue orders to them, could be quite good. And the other one is Gatekeeper, which is a replacement to the bow cannon. It's 72 inches, heavy D3 plus 6, strength 9, AP minus 3 and 3 damage, and this just makes a bow cannon really reliable. I think that becomes, they get a more reliable, by dice averages, 8 shots rather than 6, strength 9, that extra pip of strength is very useful, and AP minus 3 just helps a lot. Very, very solid choice if you want to upgrade a battle cannon at some point. Next up is we have the tank aces. Now this I've considered a little bit of a downgrade. I think I might have preferred the Psychic Awakening version of this, but it is upgrades for battle tanks and super heavies. Now one of them is Master of Camouflages, which is 25 or 35 points, with 35 points being for super heavies. Now attacks over 12 inches or more, then the unit is considered in light cover, and then super heavies it is 18 inches or more. Again, I could see this maybe on a Rogue O'Dorn if it has Armour of Contempt as well. That would be really, really nice to have, just to give it an extra bit of protection. So yeah, I'd certainly consider that on a Rogue O'Dorn. Meticulous Calibrators, which is 20 to 40 points, 20 being for the battle tanks, 40 for the super heavies. Ignore the effects of cover, so that just means that if you've got an enemy unit that is really hunkered down, got dense cover, this will be able to get past it and really cause some damage there. So although I wasn't too happy with tank aces, and I think maybe there might be stuff I might be overlooking there, I do see some potential, mainly in those two, and certainly when it comes to the Rogue O'Dorn, I like the idea of making it even more survivable. Orders, I consider most of these quite good. So how they work is that it's within 6 inches for infantry when you're going to issue orders, or 12 inches for tank commanders, though Vox units, I believe it goes up to 24 inches difference, so that's quite good, and Vox in general is looking like mostly free upgrade for most of the units, so make sure you're bringing your Vox. I do like the system, I think it's quite good. They sorted out the idea of if you come out of a tank, you can issue orders as if it was the command phase, so you issue them in the command phase, and then if your officer then comes out of a vehicle in the movement phase, it can start issuing orders. Really good. I feel 9th edition has sorted out a lot of vehicle problems in terms of usability. One of the examples is capacities within vehicles. They've gone, right, cool, we just need 1 extra or 2 extra spaces to allow characters in. I'm looking at Drukhari, I think was a big improvement on that one. And so yeah, I think they've just seen these small areas where it doesn't quite match up, and they've done quite good by that. But as for the regimental orders themselves, there's 3 to choose from: the regimental orders themselves, the tank orders, and the Prefectus orders. The Prefectus orders looking at commissars on that one, though there are a few exceptions to that can use them. The regimental orders are the ones I see look like they are arguably the best in terms of usability. We have Take Aim, which is It gives you +1 to your hit and to your AP, I believe, and I think that's going to be really, really good on heavy weapon teams. Again, the bonus said before, if you have a regimental standard, then give them take aim, that would be quite good. Take cover for a quick bonus to light cover, or if it's got light cover already, it gets both light and dense, so really, really good survivability there. Move, which is taking a bit of a nerf. It essentially gives you +2 movement, and if you advance, you get guaranteed 6-inch advance. That's a lot of. It stops you from flying up the field, which a lot of Astra did before, and frankly, that seemed a bit ridiculous. So I actually like this. It's still really, really good. And then the rest are quite fine. First rank fire, second rank fire seems a bit trickier to justify. I think with Hotshot Laz, that might actually be quite good, but again, a lot of combinations I think will justify that quite well. Tank orders are fine. I think Gunner's Kill on Sight for the reroll ones is going to be an ever reliable one. Full throttle for +2 movement and always counts as stationary when it advances. Really will help with mobility. And when it comes to tank orders, those are the two I quite like. Perfectus orders, I think is good because Commissars really needed something to justify them a little bit further. I don't know if we needed a whole new order system, but I think it does give Commissars a bit more use, as you could say, and they can issue this on friendly platoons, but they can also do it onto, I believe, friendly infantry officers and humans, which the regimental orders, I believe, could not. So it could be good that Commissar goes along with Ogrins or Bulgrins and gives them some extra abilities on top of there. And I do rate sort of Bulgrins, I do think they are still quite good, so having Commissar go along will do some quite good for them. Now, let's go into the key units. Key units, the first one I'm going to go talk about is the infamous Rogel Dorn. It was rumoured for a very, very long time, and then we did see it. And ultimately, I don't like the Rogel Dorn. It's aesthetically just not one I'm that happy with, and I think that might be a personal one. I know people who absolutely love it, who love the idea of it, but, and I might make a video on this one, I think with the name Rogel Dorn there was something missing on that one. Quite frankly, I would have preferred some kind of like giant command platform, you know, for them to issue orders from and give a whole bunch of buffs. That would have been quite cool. You know, I don't want to say like a terrain piece, but something that accentuates the idea of orders and benefits to your army. Think of like the Silent King, that the more damage it takes, more of the actual regiment on it would get destroyed and then they'd lose abilities. That's the kind of idea I was hoping for in that one, but it is what it is. But I do see plenty of potential with the Rogel Dorn, and what I'm saying this is just like, you're going to get key units will sometimes be targeted, whether it be a Primarch, whether it be a Rogel Dorn, and maybe only Rogel Dorn will get on the field anytime soon anyway. And I just see a lot of ways which you can make it a really, really good distract Carnivix. So take the tank ace for light cover over 12 inches, that'd be quite good. You can take armoured tracks for +1 save when something damage 1 hits you, which is so situational. There's going to be so rare a time that damage 1 stuff actually hits on Rogel Dorn. Usually it'll be things with much higher damage. But say you take that and then use the stratagem to reduce damage by 1. If there's loads of damage 2 stuff coming that way, you're instantly going to get +1 to your save and you're reducing all the damage as well. So that looks really, really nice on that side as well. And basically you can buff up the Rogel Dorn. It's got a lot of firepower on it, it'll do quite well, but having all these extra parts to it, I think if there's a unit that really works out quite well to add to it, might be the Rogel Dorn. Bulgrins, which is a unit I used previously, I think are still looking quite good. The 2 damage mauls are quite nice. They've got a native -1 damage to them, and then they've got the shields, whether it's the 2-up save or 4-up invul they get. Certainly I think if you're going by a big unit midfield to bully up the field, I think you can't go wrong with Bulgrin. Scout Sentinels, which basically set up anywhere in the field more than 9 inches away from any deployment, really gets you on objectives completely early. So as long as they're cost effective, I think that'd be a good unit to just go, right, get on these objectives, deal with them, which your opponent should be able to do so, but it just adds that pressure onto different areas. The Shadow Sword, which, let's face it, if that thing hits you and you don't have an invul, then good luck, because my goodness, the amount of damage it does is unbelievable. Now I won't go into some of the stats and stuff like that, because well, some of the stuff we've already shown already. We then have the Lordsor Lunatus, which potentially a good unit to go along with Pilgrims or Rough Riders. Leave the field as a deadly opponent because he's not bad. I think he's only 2 damage in combat and his pistol's quite good as well. But there's so many buffs to him as well. And one of the key ones I think is that he allows core units around him to reroll hit rolls and wound rolls of 1. But also he can select one a bit like Chapter Master, and that unit can reroll all hits, or if it's a core unit, can reroll all hits and wounds. And Rough Riders do have the core keywords, and I just see him riding along with them, and if they get able to reroll all hits and wounds, they're going to be crazy good. So that's something to bear in mind in that one. I think he can also benefit on Pilgrims, but they're not core. He can also do, I think he knows all 3 of the order systems, and he can even issue orders to super heavies, which they can't benefit usually from. So that's crazy as well. So I can certainly see the Lord Solar Lunatus doing quite well. And then ultimately I also think Gaunt's Ghost, they're 120 points. A versatile unit, and maybe a little bit too versatile, but you can deploy them forward. They've got really good defensive abilities. They can be targeted at some points as well, though it's a little bit of a distance. And it's one of those ones that each member brings something different to the team, but they can also be quite dangerous in combat. I think only some of them are damage 2, most are damage 1, but you can do a whole bunch of attacks if the unit is still full. And just for 120 points, I think it's one of those ones that I can see potential, but I actually need to see it first. And then infantry in general. So what I mean by that is that infantry is a lot of the upgrades for units are now kind of free. So a standard infantry squad gets a heavy weapon for free. I think the Cadian versions get 2 special weapons in their one, and they're just built into the cost. The only upgrades I think are for the sergeants himself. If you want to give them a plasma pistol or power sword, then yeah, you can do so, but that costs additional points. Ultimately, I kind of like this system. I think they're maybe a little bit too expensive. Maybe they just need to be reduced in points just slightly. But considering you're getting all these special equipment already built in, maybe that's not fair to say. But it's been an area such as you'd see in Death Guard, by having a lot of their weapons just become part of their choices that they don't need to pay extra points on. It has given a whole new lease of life to Plague Marines, and I think the idea for the same for infantry squads is quite good. So yeah, that is my first impressions of the Astra Codex. How am I going to summarise this? I think it's a good... It is important to get it all in one codex again, because the rules were just all over the place, and that was a real problem. So I'm quite glad to see it there. I think they've done a better job at trying to differentiate units to a degree, but there are still units that I'm just not sold on at all. But I think they have done a good job just opening up the codex a wee bit, tightening it up, but maybe losing some of our more reliable things that we want to do is going to be an issue. I'm excited to see what people say. I'm excited to see what people are able to combine with the Astra Militarum Codex. They are a hugely popular force. I painted way too many of these guys during 2020, and then they introduced the new type of infantry for them, which had the special weapon sprue, which I was devastated about after I finished them. And now there's another new one coming out as well. And I'm just looking at it as an opportunity, as that's a whole new bunch of stuff to paint, and I'm looking forward to it. And I really am looking forward to really getting out Astra Militarum again, because it's not been a force I've played recently, because it has just been too messy. So having the book now, hopefully we now can make it a lot simpler for people to play and get them on the field. So thanks again for watching. Please comment, share, like and subscribe again. Sorry for maybe the quality of this one, just unfortunate circumstances in terms of illness, but we really wanted to make sure we did get some footage out about our first impressions of Astra Militarum. So we're looking forward to see you again on our Tabletop Assault Battle Report.